On today's show, we'll be hearing what you think about rising fuel costs. We'll be breaking down ways to keep it cheap in the big topic, and we'll be talking to citizen advice about what help might be out there for you. We are back for a 2-episode special. This is the Moneycast by MyBank. Welcome back to the Moneycast by MyBank. It's been a while, but we are back on your screens for a special 2-episode energy-focused run, sponsored by SGN. SGN are a gas network company who deliver gas to households in southern England and Scotland. And SGN are proud to partner with us at MyBank and are funding this Moneycast series as they're keen to make sure that there is useful and helpful information out there to make sure you can use your energy safely, efficiently, and affordably. This week, we're going to be talking about fuel costs and the fact that they are rising to massive numbers. Next time we are going to look at fuel safety, but for now we're going to dive right into the cost stuff. As always, my name is Nick Smith-Patel. I'm the Head of Education for Young Adults at MyBank and your host for the My Moneycast. As always, you can get us along the bottom. You can see all our socials scrolling along. If you need to get a hold of us, please feel free to reach out. And you can always email me at nick@mybank.org. But without any further ado, let's get into a new feature we've got for you this time called What Do You Think? We asked young people via our social media what they thought about the fact that prices were rising for gas and electricity. So, here's what they said. So what's clear is that a lot of you are worried about the fact that your bills are about to go up in price and you don't always know where to go for help. So today for our big topic, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to try and break down some of those ways you can keep the cost down, and if you can't keep the cost down, where you can go to get some help. So without further ado, let's get into the big topic. Question one, the big question, why have the costs risen in the first place? Well, it's a weird mix of politics and weather and the pandemic, but rather than me trying to explain that to you, I've got a clip here from the BBC. So have a look at this. This will explain roughly why prices have started to rise.
Gas and electricity bills are going up at unprecedented levels. They're likely to have doubled in the space of a year. But why? And how is the UK more vulnerable? Well, it's mainly the price of wholesale gas. So what your supplier pays producers of energy. World economies opening up after COVID caused a massive spike in the demand for gas. The UK is hit relatively hard because it's one of Europe's biggest users of natural gas. Around 85% of homes have gas central heating, and it also generates a third of the country's electricity. This reliance on natural gas has been growing as we've pushed out burning coal. And then in the last year, well, the wind's not been blowing as much as usual, something that would normally produce up to 25% of the UK's electricity. All this means, yet again, more reliance on gas. And storage capacity in the UK is also lower than in some European countries. We're also suffering as Russian supply to Europe has been as low as just 1/5 of pre-pandemic levels. Now, the Russians say this is because they need it themselves. This has all meant that more suppliers who we pay our bills to are going bust. Over 25 so far. As something called the price cap, which protects us, the consumers, means suppliers are buying energy at a loss. The cost of moving people onto other suppliers also gets added to bills. That's cost £1.8 billion so far. So up to an extra £100 on individual bills. The good news is that wholesale costs will eventually drop off, but consumers won't feel it straight away.
So as you can see, we might be facing rising costs for quite some time. We're going to talk about ways to make your energy bills cheaper, starting with the first one we normally talk about, which is energy switching and trying to find a cheaper price for your current supply. So you might have heard that energy switching has some issues at the moment. The problem is the way energy switching works The prices that you see on those comparison sites are predetermined. They've already bought the gas or the electric at a very cheap rate, and they're going to sell it to you for a little bit of a profit, but it's still going to be cheaper than normal. The problem is that the cost of gas and electric is so high right now that no one can offer those cheaper tariffs. And in fact, the current advice is, rather than trying to switch your provider, which may end up with a very, very big bill, is to stay on what we call the standard variable tariffs, which will be price capped. However, the price cap will be changing in April as well. At the moment, you're capped per unit and per day in terms of how much you charge. That will be changing a little bit, and we'll talk about that now. So, like we say, you've heard about the price cap. It doesn't necessarily mean you'll be paying a fixed amount for your bill. It just means that you'll be paying a fixed amount per unit. Okay, so it doesn't mean, for example, that we're going to say you're definitely going to pay £80 for your bill. It depends. If you use more, you'll pay more. If you use less, you'll use less. The problem at the moment is that in April, the cap will rise. And so people at the moment who are on the variable tariff will be protected up to April, but in April, it's going to go up, and it will do another kind of change in September. So let's have a look at what the price cap difference is for the average household at the moment. So let's take a look at this information we've got. So at the moment, the price cap means that for electric, each unit of electric you use is capped at 21 pence per unit, and they can charge 25p a day as a standing charge. From April, that will rise to 28p per unit and 45p per day on the standing charge. As for gas, the current rate is 4 pence per unit and 26 per day in a standing charge. When the cap increases in April, that will be going up to 7 pence per unit with a 27p per day charge. And that comes from Ofgem in February 2022. So what's the effect on you? Well, it means that you might have had higher gas bills and electric bills than you've ever had before, even if you use the same amount as last year. It might mean that you need to budget differently and find other places to save money in order to pay for the increase in your fuel costs. And the price cap will help somewhat, but like we say in April, that is going to go up. To show you how that's going to affect you in real terms, let's have a look at this. This is a price graph of the difference between the current price cap and the one that's coming in April. And you can see by looking at this graph that at the moment people will pay about £1,200 a year for their electric. Once the price cap goes up, we may be seeing bills go up by anything up to sort of £700. So that same household that was paying £1,200 might be paying up to £1,900 per year in the future. So really important that you're thinking about ways to cut costs. You know, the basic one is spend less if you use less, right? Turn things off, turn them off at the plug. Make sure you're leaving things that are not on standby off at the switch rather than just on standby. And also making sure that you are using all the stuff in your house as efficiently as possible. So, you know, if you're going to put your heater on, don't open your windows at the same time. Simple stuff. There are some funky, cool things you can do as well. So you can buy timer switches, which, for example, if you've got a heater, electric heater, you can plug this timer switch into the wall so that it will turn off after a certain amount of time. And if you want to get really cool about things, you could even buy plugs that you can control with your phone. So when you're leaving your house, you can just hit off and everything in your house just turns off, not on standby, saving you loads and loads of money. One of the biggest culprits of this is mobile phone chargers. Simplest thing you can do, take your mobile phone charger out of the wall when you're not charging. The amount of money people waste just leaving it plugged in is ridiculous. So just take it out, save yourself some cash. But the reality is that even with all of those things, even all of those tips being used, you might still struggle to pay for your energy. And so the Moneycast mantra, as you know, is if you need help, you ask for it. So let's have a look at some of the help that is on offer if you are struggling to pay your bills this year. First thing to say is that 90% of people who struggle to pay their bills say nothing. That's silly. That's just so silly. Please, if you're struggling, if you can't make a payment, talk to someone, at least talk to your energy provider and let them know that you might need some help. There are also government schemes that you can apply for. We're going to talk through those now. You may have heard of a few of these. Let's go through them. So the first one is a cold weather payment. This is a £25 payment given for every 7 days of cold weather between November and March, right? It has to be very cold. It has to be 0 degrees for that week. And there are specific restrictions. So if you get universal credit, you might be able to claim this if you've got a disability or if you've got children. Do check on the government website to see if you're eligible. The next one we can talk about is the warm home discount. This is a £140 discount for some people getting pension credit, or for you guys, people in low income households. If you're on a low income or claiming benefits, you should always check with your energy provider to see if you can claim that discount, and you would apply directly through the supplier as well. Next up, we have the Household Support Fund. This is a funding package available to your local council to help people who are vulnerable. So different councils will administer this in different ways. You need to talk to your local council and see what offer they've got for people in your situation, but there should be some help on offer. If you are claiming benefits, that's probably an indication you'll get some help from that fund. But again, it's different for different boroughs. If you're living in Scotland, you might be able to apply for the Child Winter Heating Assistance Scheme. It's a £202 payment made once a year, and it's open to people who have disabled children, or if you're a young person under the age of 19 with a disability. Again, that's only Scotland, but extra help if you need it. The other thing to talk about quickly is for Welsh households, there is the Winter Fuel Support Scheme. That's £100 annual payment, and you must be claiming benefits in order to get that. For this year, you need to have been claiming benefits between the 1st of December 2021 and the 31st of January 2022. And if you're claiming things like income support, universal credit, working tax credits, you should be eligible as well. The other thing to say is you must be responsible for paying the energy bills in the property in order to get that £100. Now, in addition to all of those schemes, there's other things that people may have heard of. So, for example, the government has announced 2 relief schemes. One is that if you live in a flat that is council tax band A, B, C or D, that the government will be giving you £150 off your council tax bill. And the other scheme you may have heard about is the £200 fuel rebate. They're going to pay £200 towards your electric bill in October. The only problem with that is that you'll have to pay that back for the next 5 years at £40 a year extra on your bill. The idea is that they're going to help you now while it's really expensive, and then you pay that back slowly when prices have gone down. Again, do make sure that you check for the latest up-to-date information at the gov.uk website. And just remember, with that last one, you are paying it back. It's not free money. The £150 for the council tax is non-repayable, so you get that for free. There is something else I want to mention. It's something called the Priority Services Register. You may not have heard of this before. The way this works is all of the gas and electric companies have a list of people who might need extra help given their circumstances, whether that's you need a refrigerator to look after your medicines, you've got young children, or in our case, you're a young householder. Now, the PSR, as they're known, is a way for you to tell the gas and electric company before something happens that you might need extra help. And normally we talk about things like if there's a fuel cut, or your gas or electric that stops working, they can provide bottled water or heaters. But in this case with the costs, there is also a part of the scheme that helps you if you get into arrears. So if you're worried about the cost of fuel, if you're worried about being vulnerable and want some extra help, actually, I would say if you're just not sure about what to do in the next few months, get on the PSR. There's no harm in asking for help before you need it. And if you need the help, you may as well take it. And it's free. PSR doesn't cost you anything at all. The best way to go here is to contact your electric or your gas provider, and they can sign you up. And if they sign you up for one, they can also sign you up for the others. So talk to your electric company, and they can sort you out for gas and water as well on the same register. And with this, it's the hardship funds we're looking at. So if you're on the PSR, those companies may be able to help you when you get into those arrears with these higher costs. The other option, which we haven't talked about yet, is grants from charities. And so there are lots of other charities who are offering money to people who may be struggling. How do you find them? Well, there's a great website called Turn to Us, and you can go there, put in your circumstances, and it will tell you all the grants that you may be eligible to apply for. No harm, no foul. If you apply and you don't get it, so be it. But if you apply and do get these grants, normally they're non-repayable, designed to help you out, and will therefore not cost you anything. So, nothing to be lost by asking. So let's sum up all those things, shall we? So first of all, the government schemes. You have the cold winter payment, the warm home, the household support fund. Scotland has the child winter heating assistance, and Wales has the winter fuel support. You can also ask for help from your energy provider, so tell them if you're having problems. Joining the PSR is a good idea, so again, contact your energy provider. And you can also search for grants from other charities from websites like Turn to Us. So a few different ways there of potentially making things a little bit easier for you. We're going to be talking to someone from the Citizen Advice Bureau about how to make things even easier. So let's move into the next section, which is Real Talk. On this week's Real Talk, I'm joined by Tom Brooke-Bullard, who is the Senior Policy Researcher for Citizens Advice. How are you doing, Tom?
I'm great, Nick. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for joining us, and thanks for answering some questions for us. We've been talking about the rising fuel and energy costs and why that's the case, and the weather and that kind of stuff. But before we talk about that a little bit more with you, do you want to just say a little bit about what it is that Citizen Advice do in kind of the organisational sense?
Yeah, definitely. So the clues in the name. We're an advice charity. We're actually a network of charities all across the country. We provide people impartial advice, and that's online, over the phone, in person, and crucially, it's always for free. People can contact us for personalised support about absolutely anything. Often it's things like benefits, managing your energy bills, dealing with an issue with your landlord, but so many other issues as well. And in the energy space, we're the consumer watchdog for the energy market, which means we keep an eye on how energy suppliers and the market are performing for consumers, and use our evidence and research to advocate for consumers as well.
So it sounds like you're our best friend here, then, really, if you're doing the kind of policy end. So we were talking about how to keep costs down earlier, and we know that there's been a few energy companies who've been in the media in the last few weeks or months with some really dodgy advice about how to stay warm. If you had to tell people where to go to get decent, sound advice, where would you be sending people?
Yeah, that's a really, really great question, Nick. I think, as you say, there have been some fairly suspect pieces of advice, and particularly at the moment, as we see prices at a generational high, it's particularly important that people can get information and advice that they can trust. One place, that we would recommend, there's lots of advice on our website, so we would definitely recommend that people check there. Something we recently did was we teamed up with an organisation called the Energy Saving Trust to try and offer advice on staying warm and keeping bills down. As I said before, it is important to know that bills are really high at the moment. So there are limited things that you can do within your own home in order to keep them down, but they are obviously extremely high, and that's something we're aware of. But there are small things that you can do, like checking your home for any gaps in the doors, windows and floors, blocking any holes where you could be getting a draft through. If you are renting, you can speak to your landlord about getting some of these things done as well. There are other things that you can do, like turning off appliances when you're not using them, rather than keeping them on standby. And you might also be able to adjust your thermostat very slightly in order to bring the costs down, but we do urge people to not put it lower than they're comfortable with. So I would really say having a look at the Energy Saving Trust's website, particularly for things like that you can do in your own home. I think that would be the place where I would start.
And of course, your website, Citizen Advice, I'm guessing, is another good source of place to go and check stuff out. We know that the current kind of fuel cost crisis it's a result of a number of factors, right? Things have happened, and therefore this has happened. So is there anything you would want to say to young people about the nature of the crisis, about, how to, we said bills are going to get more expensive. We know that, that's the truth. But what would you want young people to understand about what's going on right now?
Yeah, I think that probably the main thing that I'd want people to understand is that you're not alone, and that there are people who can help you through this. As you say, the prices are incredibly high at the moment, and there are things that you used to be able to do in terms of switching energy supplier that isn't so much of an option now. But there are lots of people that you can speak to who will give you really good advice. So if you're struggling to pay your bills, I would first of all say speak to your energy supplier, because they can and actually do need to offer you extra support. So one thing that they might do is set up an affordable repayment plan, and have a discussion with you around what you can and can't afford. They can also place you on something called the Priority Services Register, which can offer you extra support if that's something that you require. If, depending on how that conversation with your supplier goes, they might also refer you to independent debt support, or energy efficiency advice, and that can be really helpful as well. They may also be able to offer you temporary credit if you're on a prepayment meter, So it's really, really useful to try and chat to them in the first instance. But if you're not, there's also other, on top of that, there are other grants that you can apply. There are grants you can apply to through your local authority. So things like the Household Support Fund. You can speak to Citizens Advice as well. And we can have a sort of broader conversation about how we can, what options you might have to maximise your income and things like that.
Super. Yeah, and I think we talked about the PSR earlier on, and make sure it's a free service. You may as well get on it. So kind of a no-brainer, really. You should get on it if you're eligible. Tom, I think that's pretty much it. There's one last question we had, which was like, if someone wanted further help right now and needs to contact someone, or if they wanted to get a hold of the Citizen Advice, to kind of ask a question, what should they do kind of immediately if they wanted to get some help?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's worth saying it's not always very easy to get a hold of your energy supplier, or the conversation that you have with them might not be as helpful as you hoped it would be. So what I would really urge people to do is contact the Citizens Advice Consumer Service for support. So for the number for that is 0808 223 1133. And that's a free service. Our consumer service can offer you personalised support with whatever problem you're facing. And in terms of energy, there are a number of energy specialists who will be able to sort of talk through your bill with you, talk about your situation and negotiate your relationship with your supplier through that. You can also speak to your local Citizens Advice, and they can be really helpful in terms of giving you support about what kind of benefits you might be entitled to, and to more broadly kind of help you to assess your options and budgeting. So I'd really encourage you to do that as well.
Awesome. That's great. Really, really massively helpful. Thank you very much, Tom, for giving us the time today and answering some questions. That's Tom Brook-Bullard, Senior Policy Researcher with Citizen Advice. Thanks again, Tom.
Cheers. Thanks.
Now, all we're going to do now is move on to our last section, which is my last 3 top tips. My 3 top tips to wrap up this episode about keeping your costs down. Number 1, keep checking those energy switching websites to make sure you know when the tariffs are available. Some of those websites let you set up a little energy alert. It's a really good idea for them to let you know when they're ready to take cheaper prices for your fuel. Ask for help if you need it is tip number 2. The PSR is a really good idea, so maybe make sure you register on that. And number 3, the easiest way to reduce your costs is to use less. And although that sounds really silly, things like making sure you're not using heating outside of the times when you really need it, your water heater isn't heating up all night, for example, things like that. Reduce your use as much as you can to get those costs down. So that's our 3 top tips for this week. And with that, I think that's time for the end of the show. Well, that's it. Thanks for joining us for our first of 2 energy focused specials sponsored by SGN. Don't forget to tune in for the next one, where we'll be talking about ways to stay safe when you're using gas and electric in your home, things you might not have thought about, and also why the UK plug is the best plug in the whole world. In the meantime, you can get in contact with us the usual ways. My email is nick@mybank.org. You can also get a hold of us at all our social media channels, which you can see scrolling across the screen at the bottom. And if you have any questions, feel free to drop us a line in either of those places. But until next time, my name is Nick Smith-Patel, Head of Education for Young Adults, signing off saying thanks very much for watching, take care, and we'll see you later. Bye-bye.